Okay, I think we can get the ball rolling. Good morning and welcome everyone. My name is Jamie Kersner Roberts. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, good. I'm the director of the campaign against anti-Semitism at the Simon Wiesenthal Center. I'm so glad to see so many familiar faces on the call for our very unique event today. We are very pleased, very honored to have with us Toronto Chief of Police Mark Saunders, a long-standing friend of our center and of the Jewish community. Before we begin, a word about the format of the event today. The Chief will be sharing some remarks with us, and we will be opening things up town hall style for question and answer. We invite any of you to pose questions for the Chief, and you may do that at any time during the event by sending your questions over the chat, or once the Chief has finished his remarks, you can raise your hand. If you click on participants, you'll see there's a little icon where you can raise your hand to speak, and then I'll know that you'll have a question, and I'll be able to call on you and unmute you for your question. So, Chief Saunders, as I said, a wonderful chief for our city, a great friend of our organization. The Chief is set to retire at the end of this month after 38 years with the Toronto Police Service. Over the years, the Chief has held a variety of roles within the service. He's worked in professional standards, in the Urban Street Gang Unit, in the Intelligence Division, in the Drug Squad, in the Community Safety Command, in the Specialized Operations Command, on the Emergency Task Force, and he served as the unit commander of the Homicide Squad, which is the largest homicide unit in the country. Since becoming police chief in 2015, I think it's fair to say that the Chief has had quite a lot on his plate. He has shown remarkable leadership, dedication, and diplomacy in helping our city navigate numerous multifaceted crises and challenges, including 2 mass casualty attacks and ongoing problems related to gang activity and violence. The Chief has continued through all this to fight for the safety and security of our city, with compassion, with pragmatism, and with an unwavering emphasis on unity, on security, and on resilience of our diverse communities here in Toronto. Every year, I should say, we at our organization, we run a trip called Compassion to Action. Many of you are familiar with this initiative, where we bring leaders in the field of policing, in education, and in politics on a journey to Europe, to Germany and to Poland, as well as to Israel, to learn about the Jewish community's long experience with anti-Semitism, with genocide, and with the Holocaust, and about our fight for liberation in our ancestral land. In 2018, we were very privileged to have the Chief join us for the trip, where he served as the unofficial resident photographer. He came with us to see the Holocaust memorials in Berlin and in Krakow, to see the marvel that is Tel Aviv, and for a visit to Yad Vashem and to our capital and holy city of Jerusalem. I look forward to hearing the Chief share some of his reflections about that journey and about other challenges and issues facing our community with us today. So a reminder to you all, if you have questions, please submit them to me at any time over the chat, or once the Chief has finished speaking, you can raise your hand and you'll be called on to pose your question. So I turn things over now to our Chief, Mark Saunders.
Thank you so much, Jamie, for that incredibly warm introduction, Rabbi May and guests. Thank you for giving me an opportunity. And I will do my best to highlight just a couple of the points that I found tremendously valuable to me in my experience that you gave me the opportunity. But before I begin, I just want to say thank you to everyone from the Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center for all that you do on a day-to-day basis. And You know, there are times when there may be extreme despair, wondering whether or not people aren't listening, people aren't getting the message. But I can tell you, as the journey continues, more people are catching on, are understanding the importance of the very subject of hate and what it can bring to its worst level. And by you providing an opportunity for some of the leaders, especially in law enforcement, I didn't quite get the connection on why there were so many law enforcement entities that were there until the very end, and I'll touch on that. But to all of the staff that were there, that took care of us and guided us through the journey, which I'll call it a journey, I just want to give it a special thanks, because without you, there was no way that we would have been able to grasp it with the gravity and the intensity that we were able to acquire. You know, when you show up as a busload full of strangers at the start, as with human nature, you always wonder whether or not there's going to be a closeness with everybody at the end of the day, or just one or two people. But this experience is so emotional that I can honestly tell you that we become a complete entity at the end of it. And so that is something that I will definitely take with me forever. So I want to thank you for adding that value in my life. So I will speak briefly about just a couple of the highlights that I found that had a lot of impact on me from many aspects. And I'll go all over the map. I'm not going to go chronologically. I didn't make notes towards this, but I just want to speak a little bit more from the heart. It is my experience, and so if I speak from my experience, hopefully it will share and show that impact. So I will say, first off, you know, when we look at the history books and things along those lines, some of the gaps that I found, really, one that really stood out to me was that I had no idea that there was all women encampments. I had never been taught that. Nobody had ever explained that to me. And going there and seeing that, I found it, it really hit a note. And I think one of the things that happens over and over throughout the journey is when you have a combination of extreme beauty and sheer ugly and darkness mixed together, it really does cause your head to stir a little bit. So when we go to this all women's encampment, and you just look, you know, a stone's throw away, there's a lake, and there's this beautiful township right there. And the baffling piece is, how can everyone know what is going on? This was just in broad daylight, and yet nobody did anything. And so you start to really try to figure out the emotion in the women that were there, and the sheer frustration in how they were treated. And you could look across and look at this beautiful township, and nobody ever did anything. And I found that to be very emotional from that regard. And of course, going into the furnace house and seeing exactly what went on there, and being the ability of standing at that spot, knowing that what was happening to human beings really resonates even to this day. The other piece that really added, of course, was having Max. Max was a phenomenal curator, and he really was able to add a tremendous amount of depth. And I feel privileged that having Max on top of everything, above all, was absolutely amazing. Max, as you all know, speaks from the heart, and as he's taking us, and for his age, he had more strength than most of us, and he would take the time to talk to us individually, collectively as groups. And there were moments where he wasn't talking to us. There were moments when he was reliving as a young boy, being there in Auschwitz and going through the things that he had to go through, and seeing where the last place was when he had to say goodbye to his dad and his uncle was really heartfelt and moving from that capacity. When we talk about the encampment, the other piece that I didn't know about was the two storage rooms as they took everyone off the trains and were told to leave their belongings. Well, first they were told to take everything valuable to them, and then as they got off the train and were told to put the one piece of luggage and proceed this way and that way, all of those baggages were taken into those two storage rooms, and I did not know that the rooms were called Canada 1 and Canada 2, representing what they felt at the time to be a country of riches and luxuries. And here we are as Canadians, and we don't even know any of these things because they're not necessarily taught to us. But I will tell you the biggest impact out of everything that still I found haunting on top of everything was, I don't remember the name of the location, but the final solution, where one of the most beautiful resorts, when you look at it from the outside, the landscaping on the inside, how beautiful it was, and you had a room full of people that had a beautiful breakfast in a beautiful room, and made the final solution of what they were going to do with the Jews in 90 minutes, and how it was broken down. And everybody in that room were educated, well-spoken, people that had degrees. And to this day, the fact that any human being could participate in that and not have a care in the world or an emotion in the world, to this day still resonates with me. And so on reflection, I remember a couple of things that I was interested in, and I think that the fact that Max had wrote this book, and we had to read this book before we went over there, and I to this day I still wonder why this could not be a curriculum in our present school systems. It's when I think about how history was taught to me growing up in high school, I thought it was just a matter of learning dates and numbers. And what I took away from all of this is history is important because it is a transfer of knowledge. And if it is taught in the right way, and if it is taught as a transfer of knowledge, the idea and the concept should be that it should make us better people. And I really have learned from this experience because of that, and saddened because as I look at history now, it seems like we're not in a place where we should be. When you listen to the narratives and you listen to the hate that still exists, and it all starts with words unchecked, and then if those words aren't unchecked, then it changes to stronger words, and then they become unchecked, and then the stronger words that become unchecked come to small little events, maybe graffiti, and then they go unchecked, and then it goes to small things like minor assault, and then they become unchecked, and then that's when it just goes beyond. And I think as communities, we have to understand that cadence and what happens. If there's not a strong sense of urgency in reducing the hate, things will happen. And I think what gravitated again that really had impact was when we went to the museum, and in that museum there was a picture on the wall, and in the picture it had an SS officer with a police officer with a big German Shepherd that had this very frightening muzzle on it, and collectively they were patrolling, and they were patrolling. So here you have local police who are supposed to be doing everything they can to preserve life and help serve your communities with equality, walking hand in hand and participating in it as well. And so that's what made it clear to me why it was important that people in positions of authority in law enforcement recognize that, you know, if we don't get it, and we are held to a higher standard, and if that is not embedded in our hearts and minds, then we are the ones that can control the importance of understanding that history and understanding what to do to not duplicate it, to get in front of it before too many things become unchecked. And so that was what I took out of the whole journey. And yes, Jamie, I was the unofficial photographer, and you know, part of my retirement, I have quite a few pictures and some video as well that I want to, at some point in time, when I have the time, which I will, to put together the opportunity of putting these pictures together to tell the story to the best of my ability as to the experiences that I had and that we as a group had on the journey that we took. So I will stop there if that is okay. And I'm not sure who moderates, but I'm here to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Well, if I may, I think we're going to start off with a question from me. So Chief, so, you know, one of our main concerns in, you know, in terms of the advocacy side of our organization right now is the growth of hate crimes against the Jewish community. That has been a national trend. We know from federal statistics that hate crimes have grown by 40% in the last 5 years in Canada. And we know as well that a large part of that growth has been growth of incidents targeting our community specifically. Your service released a report about a month ago now that found that 33% of all hate-motivated incidents in our city targeted a member of the Jewish community. When I looked in detail at the numbers and at the incidents that were being counted, I noticed that an additional 5% of incidents were targeting what the report called Israelis, you know, who we also consider part of the Jewish community. And an additional about 4% of the crimes that were classified as multi-bias crimes, so that would be people who are both Jewish and Black or gay and Jewish, were about an additional 4%. So if I total up all of the crimes that took place targeting a Jewish person, regardless of how else the study categorized them, you know, Jews were the target of over 40% of the hate crimes in the city. We're less than 4% of the population. And, you know, I would love to hear your reflections about what we in the Jewish community can do to build our relationship with police, and what police can be doing, and what is the way forward for us to be able to address this rising tide, to identify perpetrators and bring charges against them, so that together we can stand together and send the message that these incidents won't be tolerated.
Okay, thanks, Jamie. You cut out near the end there. With respect to the stats, I don't have the stats on me right now, and I know Scott Purchase is there, but I think a more important thing that needs to be identified is that it's safe to say that hate crimes are one of the most underreported offenses. So when we give these numbers, I would take heed in not saying, well, this is what the truism is, because I will say that it's easier for people to do nothing, to not get involved. And that's, I think that is a critical piece. In order for us to move forward, I think we need to figure out what we need to do as law enforcement and as communities to build enough comfort zone for people to understand two things: that you have to be involved. You have to be involved so that we can see what the true measure is. There's so many external factors that are causing certain increases. When we look at social media and the impact that it has and that it is playing compared to the digital platforms that never existed before. And so we can figure out how to do this, but I think we have to be a little bit more strategic now, because when we look at a lot of the offenses, we don't necessarily get a lot of help from communities as a whole. The problem with the Jewish community is that they're always in the top 4 every single year, as long as I can remember being in the seat and prior to that. So, you know, the Jewish community definitely is a much higher target than most of the other communities in Toronto. But I'd also say that that is going to be collective across Canada. Scott, you could nod your head up and down if I'm wrong. Okay, there we go. So the coordinated approach is going to be key and critical, more so than ever. The education piece is a critical factor. And I really do think that the schooling system needs to have more robust conversations on that, more robust mechanisms to teach that these are things that should not be overlooked for anybody. And so the education piece, I think, becomes a lot more critical from a preventative side. And if that goes unchecked, then it leads to other things. And then on top of it, the internal mechanisms and what do we do as families and communities to teach our kids, to teach our younger generations on the importance, on not dismissing it, and then figuring out, telling the better, truer story so that they have an understanding of the horrible impact and outcomes that can occur if things are not done. And I think that that is one of the factors that we also need to consider.
Thank you, Chief. We have a member of our board of directors here, Molly Soichet, who has a question for you.
Yes. Hi, Chief Saunders. I wanted to first thank you for your wisdom and your compassion and your empathy and time and service for those years, and also for your willingness to take the time to learn about issues that we face in the Jewish community. My question is, I guess, twofold. Just based on what you were just commenting about the importance of education, I'm actually a professor at the University of Toronto, so I spend my life thinking about the importance of education, and I completely agree with you. And at Francis Simon Wiesenthal Center, we have the Tour for Humanity that goes to all the different schools. So the first question is, what more can we do to enhance that education and that knowledge? And then the second question I have is just recognizing that you are retiring, and we're very sad that you are. How do we take all that wisdom and knowledge and education that you have and transfer that? And how can you help us in doing that to the next person?
Well, first, thank you for the kind words, Molly, and thank you for being an educator. It's something that doesn't get expressed enough or appreciated enough. So thank you for both of those things. So with I really do think that we have to get to the right tables to have those discussions, to make the education system realize the importance of why we need to keep this on the table and make our younger folks a little bit wiser. And I'm not saying that it's our younger folks, as you would attest. This hits every age, every demographic, and so. But we need a foundation somewhere, and I think being at the right table with decision makers to really show why history plays such a critical role in us as human beings and us as communities that we live in today, and you know, it's not a matter of memorizing numbers. It's a matter of seeing how things have happened. I mean, I've done my share of Black history, but I had to do it on my own, and it has helped me become wiser to understand why things are happening today. But I can tell you a lot of people don't understand why things are happening today within my community. So the ability of getting at the right table, whether it's with trustees or superintendents or whatever, to say, you know, let's have a talk on what why the importance of history is necessary, why hate crimes or promoting hate propaganda are so crucial in today's environments, and with the force multiplier of those digital platforms, it becomes worldwide, and so it can be a dangerous thing if we don't have that conversation with our educators on that. Speaking to my organization, I can tell you, Molly, I am surrounded by my command officers who have an understanding of tolerance and compassion equal to mine, who have a thirst for knowledge, and who have shown me through example that they sit on the same level of what I've expressed to you today. I mean, having take the journey has emboldened me to be a little stronger in certain platforms and in certain discussions, and I really think that this organization has such a strong willingness to want to learn, and so we'll definitely continue to provide the knowledge and the skills that we have. Continue to be careful with the type of individual that we're looking to hire. We've made some breakthroughs with looking at our constable selection system right now and redefining what value is, and the things that I need in my organization are going to be different than other organizations that are smaller or more rural. I need people that have compassion. I need people that have emotional intelligence. I need people that understand and will respect the lived experiences that people have had. And so we put all of this in our training components because it's necessary, and we're going to continue, and if not increase. And so when we have discussions like this, you know, your folks are the people that we want to bring to the table so that we can even have a better understanding because of the lived experiences to help make our training more holistic.
Thank you, Molly, and thank you, Chief. We have a question now from Rabbi Meir May, who is the Executive Director of the Simon Wiesenthal Center, the world headquarters in Los Angeles.
Thank you, Chief, for taking the time to be with us today. I also want to recognize Fred Wax, the chairman of the board of Friends, who's here on the call as well. And
oh, there you are, Fred. Okay. Sorry.
And thank you, Chief, for your tremendous service. Speaking about training, and I very much appreciated your comments about training. The Wiesenthal Center here in California, in Los Angeles, has a program called Tools for Tolerance at our Museum of Tolerance, of which we've trained now over 170,000 frontline criminal justice professionals and 75,000 educators. And I have to encourage what you just said, that it's very important to keep up the ongoing training of law enforcement to understand that they are dealing with multi-religious, multiracial communities, and also to recognize what is hate and when they see it. We have found that certainly with hate online, that it's not always apparent, and we have to educate law enforcement communities around the country. We did, from the United States, we did 48 from 48 states, as well as the chiefs of police from Canada, the UK, and Russia, and France, etc. But you have to know hate when you see it, and it's very important for us to have that impact on the training programs. We'd like to continue to have impact also in Canada as well, and we will look to your guidance now and after you retire to be a large part of our efforts to make sure that we're doing the right kind of training for law enforcement throughout Canada that we are known for doing in the United States as well. So would that be something that you'd be interested in doing?
You know what, that would be something that I would have a keen interest in doing. And, you know, Rabbi May, you brought up an important fact is you have to be trained to know hate when you see it. And based, I have a feeling you're very knowledgeable in that subject matter. And when you look at today's new agitator understands the law to the word. And what they will do is they'll bring it right to the line. They'll bring it right to the line where it is not a crime. And that's where it becomes extremely frustrating, because you know what the intent is, and they know what their intent is, but they also know how to use the law to protect them. So, you know, strategically thinking again, how does one circumvent that? Because now the law is out of the equation for solutions, but what can we do as communities to figure out what we can do to deal with that type of aspect? Because we're all seeing more and more of that. And all that does is it creates frustration, and it creates divide between communities, and it creates divide between law enforcement and communities as well. Because when people see it, they know what it looks like, but don't understand law to its fullest, then that's where law enforcement looks like they're not doing their job, and that's where it's frustrating. And the other aspect in Canada is we have to ask permission from our Attorney General with certain charges. And so that becomes incredibly divisive when, because it'll come across as, you know, law enforcement kind of isn't all that interested, and they're kind of kicking a can to someone else. The reality is it's not. So if there are discussions that need to be had on looking at what the best practices are when it comes to law, and you know, questioning Canada and saying, are these laws conducive for today's environment, or do we need to relook and revisit and say, hey folks, it's 2020, and we need to figure out what we can do to improve.
Okay, I've got a lot of questions coming in here on the chat. I'm just going to paraphrase them a little bit here. Chief, we've seen terrible attacks on the Jewish community in the United States in recent years. How have these attacks changed the approach of Toronto Police with respect to protecting Jewish spaces? So this would be referring like to the Tree of Life in Pittsburgh and other attacks.
Yeah. So when we talk from a law enforcement perspective, I know for a fact that one of the things that we have taken stronger consideration for is what intelligence mechanisms do we use to assist us in ensuring that there aren't copycats. So we will proactively be looking for things, and we will always be working with communities, whether it's town halls or specialized types of events to educate. Education is the most important factor when it comes to one protecting oneself or communities protecting oneself. And of course, the sharing of information. So anytime anyone has anything, no matter how small it is, to report it up. Because a lot of times, if you dismiss something, and then when something happens and we start deconstructing and working it backwards, that could have been a critical piece that on its surface or on its face didn't look like much, but it is a key piece to a multitude of other connecting factors that may have assisted us in our path of what we may or may not have done.
Okay, we have a question here from John. We have multiple Johns in our organization, and I don't know, I can't see the last name, so I'm not sure who that's from. But he's asking, He's asking Chief about the Al-Quds Day rally, and why it is that, that these rallies, even though they have, you know, there's such a history of hate speech taking place on the part of the speakers at this rally, why it is that they are still allowed to go forward year after year.
Yeah, you know what? I apologize. I had the complete answer to it before, and it's such a sensitive response that if I miss something to it, it will totally not explain it to its fullest. But what I can do is I can get back to you, Jamie, with that answer, because there are a lot of moving parts to it. You know, unlawful, first off, with unlawful protests and things along those lines, we have to deal with the moment based on what we have at that time, in order to have the most effective type of law enforcement. And there's never going to be a time where everybody is going to be happy with the decisions, but there's always room for discussion to help make people understand why we do what we do, and then see if there are anything, things that we can improve upon on the go forward. But I do remember I was very well versed on it a couple of months ago, and right now I'd be doing a disservice to try to answer it properly.
Okay. Thanks. I have another question from Ruth. I'm not sure if it's Ruth Eckstein. Ruth is asking about what you think that the Jewish community can do to support the confrontation against racism towards the Black community, to support Black community in dealing with racism that they face, and also without supporting anything that may be allowing any organization or any initiative that may be also enabling the growth of anti-Semitism. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I think overall for all of us, it's not to be complicit, and I think that, and that includes law enforcement as well too. So when we look at George Floyd, and you see the 3 officers that were absolutely complicit, it sends a message that it's not comfortable, because it could potentially speak to culture, and so we all have to be not complicit when we see things. And with what's going on in the Black community right now, with the anti-Black systemic racism, they're looking for exponential change. When I say that, it speaks to so many issues that have been overlooked for a long period of time, that now is the time for the call for action, not just for law enforcement, but for government and for a whole lot of different entities that speak to housing and education and homelessness and a whole host of other things that need to be addressed in a much more rapid pace than the way things have moved in the past. But it becomes a lesson learned for all of us, though. When we talk about being within the top 4 groups where year after year are the highest when it comes to hate crime, that lived experience becomes critical. And that means that we have to listen more. We have to listen more to what the concerns are and what are the best tools to move towards success and to have sustainable outcomes. And so it speaks the same thing with the Jewish community as it does with the Black community, in the sense that the changes that need to happen need to be sustainable and need to be as a result of listening to the communities that have their lived experiences addressed at all costs.
Thank you, Chief. I'm going to turn it over now to our chairman, Mr. Fred Wax.
Good to see you, Chief Saunders.
How are you, sir?
And I am fantastic because I'm sitting in your presence. And we're blessed to have someone as educated and someone who has the compassion to try to understand us And what my question is, in the 60s, Jews and blacks marched together. The civil rights movement was a part and parcel of the Jewish psyche. How do we get this leadership? How does this organization, an organization of human rights, what can we do to help the black community? And I'm learning from my children through social media and through influencers to buy and help black establishments and to do things like that. How does this organization, which you so love and support the black community?
Well, I'll go right back to what I said before and what I've learned about your community. And it's to understand our history. Once you understand our history and our journey, you become informed. And once you become informed, then you become partners in working towards the solutions with us. So there is so much history that stems from when blacks came to the North American continent and the lived experience, the splitting up of families, the fact that slavery helped drive the economy. You know, when you had black soldiers come back from war, weren't given the opportunity for property or for any type of loans to help, you know, restore their families, looking at redlining communities and the impact that it's had, looking at the fact that, you know, young black men have twice the rate of not completing post-secondary school. It's all the systematic pieces that are in play. And so if you really don't go back to, and I always equate when I talk about history, it goes back to my dad. And if things were happening when my dad, who still is alive, then it's still recent history. So when you look at the United States, our southern borders, when people are talking about lynching, the purpose of lynching was to not have black people vote. Because if they had to vote, then that obviously leads to having more opportunities. And so the lynching, which was terrorism at its finest within our country, specifically the States, we're talking about the 50s and 60s. So it's not long ago. And it wasn't in, you know, dark alleyways. They would do it in public. And you would have a lynching occur with 25,000 people. They would have on their Sunday best to watch these lynchings take place. So when you understand that this is still recent history, then you can start to gravitate a little bit more to what the roar is. And it's not just you know, people yelling and screaming because it's a thing to do. There are genuine, true systemic issues, still some beliefs and values that have crossed over to present day. And so really it is a matter of being fully informed as to why this has taken place. And then from there, you've got so many launch off points and how you can move towards the helping piece. And so if you put it in that order, that would be the best final product. But if you come up with the solutions first, it kind of does help, but we're looking for sustainability. So knowing the history and then coming up with the solutions and working with the solutions is what would be a 10 out of 10.
We have a new, very good question. Again, it's connected to a relationship between the Jewish community and the Black community. The question is, movements such as Black Lives Matter, to which Jews can sympathize and offer support, often have secondary but significant anti-Semitic elements, such as the connection with Louis Farrakhan. Do you think, Chief, that the Toronto Police Services going forward in enforcing the peace and in laying charges will have the ability to recognize these conflicting elements?
Yeah, so again, we have to be cautious when we say Black Lives Matters as an organization, because there's so many different factions. So when the first protests went out, and I went out and I, you know, had an opportunity to see what was going on, I could feel the emotion, I could feel the anger, the fear, the frustration, and all of those factors. But it was a different group. I would have young Black men and women at these rallies. So mid-20s, late teens, mid-20s. And they had a different message. It was time for change. We want to be part of the decision-making for our future. And, you know, you fast forward to Sunday or Saturday with the Black Lives Matters, with people showing up with fluorescent pink paints and wanting to remove statues, a completely different entity. So we've got to be cautious, and you've got to pick which avenue. At the being careful with this, there are things that need to be done. Our ask throughout this whole process is that everyone be lawful. Toronto has done an amazing job to date. When we look at every other major city in North America, and people forget that between Canada and US, we're the third largest city, third largest. And you turn on CNN, Fox, whichever one you choose, and you've got Molotov cocktails, you've got cars flipped upside down, you've got looting going on, you've got tear gas all over the place, you've got shields going on, you've got shootings taking place. And here we are, bigger than absolutely almost all of them except two, and not one shield. I didn't have to bring a shield out. I did not have to bring my public order out. Not as much as a pop bottle broke. There's a twofold to that. Number one, it's the city of Toronto. We understand inclusion far better than most others. When you look at these dividing moments between police and law, police and community, when you start deconstructing in recent history, you will hear we need to establish a relationship with the community. We have established relationships with our community, and that's been a big investment plan on our part. And I'm grateful that the vast majority of people recognize that and have understood that, but there's more work to be done. So our ask is always going to be the same. You know, we will respect your rights to have your beliefs. We're in a democratic country, democratic city, but we just want you to obey the law. That's it. And so far it's been working well. Granted, Saturday was not a true personification of what the vast majority of Canadians are supportive of. And it kind of, you've got to be careful because you don't want others to distract what the real message is, what the real concerns are. And, you know, we're looking for collectiveness. If we're going to get this right, there's only one way in which it can be done. It has to be collective. So when you have other entities that are going to piggyback off these moments to create divide, confusion, chaos, it's never a good day.
Thank you so much, Chief. I'm going to turn things over now to our chairman, Fred Wax, to offer some concluding remarks.
God willing, you're going to have some time on your hands, and I would certainly want to spend some of that time with you, Chief Saunders. You've been inspirational to our community. I've seen you at many events, and I think that the fact that you've taken the time, we have a couple of things in common. My father was a Holocaust survivor, so I'm looking just a generation ago. He was also a kidney transplant recipient. And so I understand many things, but what I would love to see is how we could possibly have better communication. And I'm looking up from the ground up from my children who are all in their 20s and 30s now, that are trying to make sure that we understand at this point in time that we have to be supportive of the police, of the Black community, and of people in general. And given that this is, as I said, a charity of human rights, I think that we need to do a better job in terms of building that relationship and understanding, as you say, the way you've learned about our history, that we should be learning about your history. And that's something that I will endeavor to do with our board and with our teachers, because I think that the city of Toronto, the country of Canada, and the world will be a better place by doing such. I really do appreciate you taking the time at this juncture in your life. We, the city, will dearly miss you. You have been, you've dealt in some really interesting things, including the Pride Parade and watching the police and how Black Lives Matter, the movement versus the moniker, how you handled yourself there, and you know, the Great Blue Line in Toronto, where we are the third largest city in North America. You take away a lot when you say that it's because of the city of Toronto. No, it's because of leadership like yours that has been able to navigate through these very, very difficult times. So don't underestimate what leadership from yourself as heading the police force has done to make us all feel safe and a place where we can speak out in a measured and mannered way, and that we can do what's right the same way our police force and you are doing right. We wish you all the best, and we look to continue to have a very close relationship with you in whatever your endeavors are, sir.
Thank you so much, Fred. And I've got to say, it has been a fantastic almost 38 years serving as a Toronto police officer. And you know, I love the men and women that we have. They have helped make me look great. It's a sum of all parts equals a whole. And so to be a part of this amazing organization has, most of my adult life, has been an experience that will remain with me forever. But, you know, sitting in this seat really gave me an opportunity and to have that I would not have in this seat. And that was the ability of meeting some really amazing people, really getting an opportunity to hear fulsome stories of journeys. And, you know, Toronto is made up of a lot of immigrants that have made tremendous sacrifice. And what I like about it is they've stayed here, and they've stayed here for a reason. And when you understand that, life really is about listening more than talking. And that's what makes you richer, when you really start to learn, because then the teachings and the knowledge that you have, you try your best to impart on others. But if not, it at least gives you the true empathy, so that when you do have these encounters, your judgment factors are stripped, and you come in as objective as possible, and wanting to help to the best of your ability for those moments. And so to Francis Simon Weezer Southlander, thank you so much for everything that you have taught me, and more importantly for how warm you've made me feel each and every time I've had an opportunity, whether at Best Shalom or at any of the functions that I've been at. You have an incredibly strong community, and you have to stay strong. And that is something for others to use as a prototype as well too. And always the quest to want to be stronger is so important. So you have given us that knowledge that we need to look at as well as we start developing our models to move towards success. So thank you everyone for everything, the tremendous support. Love you guys all, and hopefully I live in the city. So not going to leave the city, but hopefully there are opportunities where we can chat.
Well, you will have a lifetime membership with us in terms of every event we have. So we will be seeing a lot of you.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Thank you so much, Chief. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Okay, thank you everyone. Bye-bye.